Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. We're continuing the fairy tale Still Red. Remember, Emily has just managed to get to the cliff and she sat down to read her story for one last time. This is the true story of a girl named Red. In some times and places she was called Little Red or the Red the Hood, stupid names you ask me. Nevertheless, I am that girl. Rather, I was that girl once upon a time in a land far, far away. Or not. I don't expect you will believe my story, nor do I expect you to place my trust in any of what is said in the past or future, and I don't expect you to place any trust in my words. Go ahead, call me a liar. I won't be offended. After all, it's only a story. A few pictures, badly drawn. Nothing more. I was called a liar long, long before. Yeah. Before the hunter tossed her hood over my head, and I don't care about the names. Now that I'm no longer young, by any definition, my only allegiance is to the truth, because there is no truth but the whole truth. So take what you will. I am still Red. My woodcutter mother and evil stepfather abandoned me in the woods, with some hunters from whom I managed to escape. Eventually. But not before I learned things no child should ever know. The things men do in the dark. And long after I learned how a big man's hands fit about my small neck. This is the truth I learned in the woods. Vision dims, and blood roars in the ears when precise pressure is applied. The little girl's body goes limp until she wakes again, and he is still there, with his big hands. These are true things I know. This is the true story that is mine. It's mine to tell, paid for in blood and pain and time. The important thing, however, the thing storytellers always forget or gloss over, is their rush to get to the sexy part about wolves and girls, is that I was never stupid enough to be fooled by a disguise. I was never a pushover, never a little ninny, tra-la-la-la-la, prancing through the woods with a basket. I fought back, always, even when I was very small, and my puny fists and pitiful kicks only excited hunters. In time I grew. I waited for my moment, and in time it came. One night, while the hunters snored, their naked-bodied stacks like thick white logs, I escaped through a rip in the tent and ran through the dark woods. A dog collar flapped around my waist. Sticks and thorns tore at my feet until they bled. I ran and ran. A pack of feral trial attorneys found me and took me in. They raised me as best they could, although they really didn't know what they were doing. They spent much too long in the dark woods themselves and had forgotten the ways of civilized people. At least, that's what I told myself. In reality, I think they were afraid of me. You see, during those long nights, in the tent with the hunters, I'd learned to kick and fight and scratch and bite. Later, whenever anyone tried to discipline me, I fought back. No matter what the infraction. I just did. I fought back because for me, nothing had changed. It didn't matter that I'd escaped and was no longer chained with the hounds. I was still in the dark woods. I was still hiding under the dark green canvas, still smelling rotting leaves and mud, still and listening for the squeak of rubber boots, dreading the shadow of a man's shoulders against the firelight and his hard hands And then when it came, and no, oh no, it came no matter what, it came, and I was nothing against the tide. The waves of sensation that dragged me down and down, down deeper still, deeper than breath in the dark places where there was no more breath, no more air, no more. And then, from the stillness, breath came over again, and the dreaded light. Another day followed by another night, again and again. Still, I fought. Even after I escaped, when anyone came close to touch, I transformed into a whirlwind of elbows, feet, and nails. I snarled and screamed like a wild thing, and no one touched me without a battle. The pack tried not to blame me for my feral ways, because they understood little girls lost in the dark woods fought back or they died. The trial attorneys had been hunted themselves. That was how they'd been exiled to the wild. However, their memories of it had faded with time. They longed to go back to the world they lost. They dreamed of returning to the bright cities of their youth and how their friends would exclaim and throw lavish parties to celebrate their arrival. When it came right down to it, they only had one problem: how to explain the girl. She was out of control, a broken child, dangerous and unpredictable. Something must be done. Although the glory days of the trial attorneys were long past, they were not without influence in the greater world. Regarding the girl called Red, they searched for options. That meant they whispered amongst themselves, scratched their hairy chins, and muttered over stubby glasses of Scotch rocks. There was a great deal of coming and going, but in the end they decided I was too hard to handle, which was no different from what they'd thought the day they found me in the woods, with blood and filth dripping down my legs. What changed was their opinion. In the realm of trial attorneys, feral or not, opinions count more than truth. Opinions are enshrined in glossy leather books with long and impressive titles stamped in gold. The volumes are passed from one generation to the next, with critical citations read aloud with great pomp and ceremony. You see, from the beginning, the pack had never talked about me to the authorities or anyone who could have done anything. Doing so would have required them to lift their long snouts from that study and actually tell the terrible story. They would have had to remember it and replay it in detail. The condition in which they'd found me, which would be annoying considering the effort they'd put into forgetting that day. Besides the fact that the trial attorneys had been too long in hiding themselves, they'd forgotten how to tell the truth, if they ever knew it in the first place. That's another story. In the end, they decided to consult an old woman who lived on the other side of the forest. They led me through the woods to her cottage. After the trial attorneys left, I followed her into the kitchen and watched while she rolled white dough flat and sliced it into long strings to make noodles. I lifted the noodles carefully, draped them over the wooden rods propped between chairs. She asked me questions. I told her my story. Because she was calm and gentle and her breath did not stink of Scotch, I told the truth. She never called me a liar. Later she made me hot black tea, poured it into a saucer, and blew on it to cool, and spread thick brown apple butter on fresh bread. The kitchen was quiet and clean. I sat by the fire with a stack of books. I could have stayed there forever. The whole afternoon, the old woman worked and hummed under her breath. Occasionally, I would look up, see her watching me with her flat grey eyes. That evening, when the trial attorneys returned, I listened while she reported that, in her opinion, the hunters had just damaged me beyond all hope of repair. She said it would have been better if I'd never been born, but the damage was done, and there was nothing anyone could do. Then she zeroed in on the real problem. I had lived. The filth and horror can never be removed from the child. More's the pity. Death, well, that would have wiped my slate clean. However, it is not for us to know why she survived, when compassion would have sent her to a better place, is what the old lady said. At that, the trial attorneys exchanged looks. I did not understand. Something had changed, but I knew not what. They thanked the old woman for her advice. Before we departed, she handed me a basket containing a loaf of bread, a jar of apple butter, and a sharp, sharp knife. The walk home to our den was long. Along the way, the trial attorneys talked about the hunters one last time, as if the tale belonged to them now. It was all very sad, they said. A tragedy, the things that had happened to me. It wasn't fair, but it wasn't their fault. They'd done their part, put a roof over my head, they'd clothed me, but I'd shown no appreciation. I had continued to fight. They could not understand my shameful aggression in the face of their kindness. Next followed a recounting of my many failings, a lengthy list by any measure. I'll not bore you with the now details. However, feel free to take a break or jot down relevant items as they occur to you. Brainstorm if you wish. Have fun. No matter what you come up with, I'm certain the items on your list will be similar to what I heard that night. We walked and walked. They said more things, a torrent of words rushed over the tromping of their big feet and the swish of their bushy tails and the clacking of their fearsome teeth. In summation, the trial attorneys were hurt and disappointed by my attitude, along with the whole being difficult part, which led them to their final point that, well, it was my fault. My fault for allowing myself to have been taken by the hunters in the first place. This fact brought them to the most important truth. The safety of others must be assured. It was their solemn duty to protect others from me. Granny herself couldn't have tied it up with a neat bow. When we reached the den, I returned to my small room. There we completed our last conversation, where they said the surest solution was always the simplest one. Thinking too much inevitably led to complexity, which was always trouble, and trouble was the one thing they could not tolerate. It was the very reason they'd abandoned their careers in the city. Trouble must, above all things, be avoided, and that is how it happened. A shove on the shoulder, a swing of the door, a snip of the latch, and it was done. They locked me up for my own good. I pounded on the door and yelled, loud and long, to no avail. At length they sent an emissary, a hapless junior partner who commanded me to stop causing trouble or else I would be sent away. Think on that, young lady. As it turned out, I had a lot of time to think. And that's the end of part 2 to the fairy tale still read. We shall continue when we come back. Thank you for listening and many blessings.